So week 6, we got a lot of shuffling on our board. A lot of the same teams, but there's a lot of shuffling going on in our power rankings. Mr. Joseph, year 1 through 10. How do you see college football right now in the top 10 programs?
You may notice Alabama up to number 1. I'm all in. Number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Texas. Number 3, Tennessee. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5, Georgia. Number 6, Miami. Number 7, Penn State. Number 8, Oregon. Number 9, Mizzou. And number 10, sadly, I have Clemson.
So I'm going to start off with this because I'm just going to.
Wait, let's see yours. Yeah, let's see yours first.
Mine off because I got a bone to pick with you. But number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Texas. Number 4, Georgia. Number 5, Tennessee. Number 6, Miami. Number 7, Oregon. Number 8, Clemson. Number 9, Missouri. And number 10, the USC Trojans. Joe, let me start off with this. You got all over me last week about the Missouri Tigers. Now, here's the interesting thing and why I'm going to completely just ruin what I'm about to tell you or say to you because I'm going to pick Texas A&M to beat Mizzou this week.
Okay.
But you got on me last week about Mizzou being in my top 10 power rankings.
Well, okay, we're in a situation now, though. One important thing happened last week. Ole Miss lost. Ole Miss completely removed themselves from the radar. I didn't have a lot to really choose from. Also, first of all, when I build my power ranking, I start from scratch. Like, I try not to build off of what I had the previous week. I try to just completely remove where I was. I try to completely start my footing at a completely new spot, and I start from 1, and I work my way down on who I think has been the most impressive to this point. Now, Mizzou does have some question marks, and we're going to get to talking about that with game picks. But who else am I supposed to put there? We've gotten this point now in October. I would argue that I think 8 through 17, who the F knows? Like, in all seriousness, I know that's not a great answer, but there could be any arrangement of teams that could go in those final 2 spots in the top 10, maybe even the final 3 spots, because so much is about to change and so much is about to happen in the upcoming month of college football that's going to drastically change things.
Thought is exactly what you would say. So you fed right into what I was going to really get at with you. So we probably shouldn't have expanded the playoff.
What? What does that have to do with anything?
Because look at the situation that we have right now. Joe, teams, I would say 7, maybe 8 through 12, 8 through 15. There's a massive gap. You're going to tell me that there's not a massive gap between State, Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee to the rest of the field?
First of all, I don't think there's a massive gap. And second of all, I would argue that if anything, this is proof that the playoff was worth expanding because we can talk about so many different teams after 6 weeks that have an opportunity to make it into the playoff. It's a competitive open field. Yes, it should absolutely be said. There shouldn't be any Big 12 teams, and there should be a maximum of 2 ACC teams in this conversation.
There should be no G5 teams.
The SEC and the Big 10 this year are insanely talented. Like, this is the deepest that both of these conferences have ever been, Blake.
No, not the deepest that they've ever been. I would say the early 2010s, no way. The early 2010s was the deepest that the SEC ever had because you had 5 different SEC teams win national championships in that run. No way, no how.
Well, I'm talking about in an individual year where you can go as deep as 9, maybe even 10.
That's also what you said.
You could go that far down in the SEC rankings, and that many teams could potentially be rankable. I mean, if South Carolina wins this week, they could be a ranked team at the end of the week.
Here's the thing about that. Ole Miss is still in that picture, ironically, even in a loss. So, look, here's what I'm going to say about Missouri. Let's get back to Missouri here. Okay, Joe, if they win this week, they'll be one of the only teams in the country that have 2 ranked wins on the season because A&M is ranked. So I just want to throw it out there that they beat Boston College while ranked. They beat Texas A&M while they'll technically be ranked. So I'm just saying there might not be playing the top premier guys at the top, but this is the second time that they've played maybe a tier, maybe just a little bit below their talent, and that they have won. So, look, I'm going to keep Missouri at 9 because I can be wrong. My pick against them and taking A&M later in the show has nothing to do with any of that. But I just had to pick on you since you got on me about Mizzou last week. So,
well, the only thing to your point about them, I don't know if I would count if you beat a team and then the following weeks they're not ranked anymore. That doesn't really count as a ranked win.
I don't think that that's fair because it's still a ranked on ranked opponent. You can't do that to teams.
Well, so for example, Florida State's a ranked win for Georgia Tech.
Well, yeah, it is. It is, but but that's not the extreme of what we're talking about here. That's one team. Okay, one team in a very bad situation. When I'm looking at Missouri, that's not going on with them. I mean, Joe, A&M is a touchdown away from beating Notre Dame early in the season. Like we can't do that now. Okay, so there's a reason why A&M is up there. It's not brand recognition. If it was brand recognition, they'd be in the top 17.
Okay.
So anyway, all right. Who in my top 10? I'll put it back up. Who in my top 10 did you not like and where they're at?
I feel like actually, and the first one I got to call out here. I don't think USC is a top 10 team at the current moment until I see more from them.
Well, remember their power ranking. It's power ranking.
I know. I thought that they slopped around with Wisconsin and then they separated late just because they were more athletic than them. But at home, you would really hope and think that they would have control and command of that game for the entirety of it. I'm just not a fan of the way they played against Wisconsin. The loss to Michigan kind of ruins it a little bit for me. If we're going to go with the Big Ten team, the credit does need to be given to Penn State. For some reason, Penn State fans think I hate you guys. I don't hate you guys. I'm supportive of Penn State when they're good and they're competitive. I just think at times they've been a little bit overhyped. So far, they have been playing to expectation, and their defense played great against Illinois. And their offense has been playing pretty strong. If they continue to build and get better every single week, they could finish in that 8 spot somewhere in there and kind of firmly grasp onto that.
Look, fair criticism. I can't really throw that out. And Penn State is undefeated, and USC is not. The reason that I went USC above Penn State, I'll give you my reasoning, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. Joe, I'm not. Look, they have been a second half team in every single game that they've played, right? Like LSU, or Power 4, I should say. LSU, Michigan, Wisconsin, right? They had to storm back in the second half to win. They have not had the ability to start fast, which is not cumbersome, of Lincoln Riley teams. Think about this, though. Joe, did you know that they were top 25 in time of possession?
I did not know that.
So they've done a complete 180 to some extent in reference to what their schematical things and they're doing offensively. I like Penn State's win last week. I think they ran the ball effectively. I thought they looked good against Illinois. Had a slip up against Bowling Green. The thing with me with USC is that if we're on a neutral field with them in Penn State, I don't know if I can take Penn State right now. Like I would slightly favor USC on a neutral field for one reason. I don't know that the best team that they saw was Illinois, and the receivers couldn't separate. And I thought Allar had issues when there wasn't much separation. Go back and look at that game, man.
Well, wait, I disagree with that, but Illinois has one of the better secondaries in the country.
Well, here's the thing, though, man. I get the Wisconsin first half for that secondary at USC. Joe, they allowed 17 passing yards in the second half. They are the number one. PFF put this out today because of the LSU.
Wisconsin doesn't have any receivers, though.
Okay, fair. But I mean, you can't. LSU does.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts. Well, they gave up big gains to.
I get it. I'm with you. I understand. Both of Penn State and USC to me have flaws. I'm just going to lean with them at the current moment. I thought you were going to say Michigan over them because they won, but Michigan can't throw a forward pass.
I don't think either. Well, that's my whole point is I don't think either of them belong on there, and Michigan should deservedly be ahead of USC because they have the win against them head-to-head.
Fair. Joe, look, both of us have Alabama at number 1, obviously coming off of a big win last week against Georgia.
Yeah.
Look, I'll give you the floor first on this because you asked me this, and I kind of gave you a ho-hum response. You asked Pate this, and look, he'll tell you this. You got a ho-hum response, and I got to give you credit here. You're like, look, man, I don't think you understand the magnitude of when they beat them with the board, what it's going to be. Both of us have Alabama at number 1 in our power rankings. I'll give you the floor, my good man. Why do you have them there?
So 2 parts here. One, Georgia doesn't deserve to fall very far because they're still a top team in the country. They just lost that football game. They started too slow. They were dealing with a couple of issues. I'm sure we're going to talk about them in a second. But Alabama's right now has the best resume out of any team and then the best on-field performances that we've seen every single week. They had an iffy game against South Florida because they were banged up and dealing with injuries. That was the biggest thing that pissed me off, is that there were some real mouth breathers in the media out there that were doing the whole, oh, what do we make of Alabama? They didn't look good. But they clearly didn't watch the game, nor did they pay attention to any of the things coming into that game to know that they were out multiple offensive linemen, going up against a very mobile, scrambling quarterback, all the things. Lack of ball knowledge seeped into these thoughts on Alabama. I knew at that moment that they were still good enough to beat Georgia. You have the Heisman favorite at the current moment. You've got a very explosive receiving core, and your defense is getting better and better every single week, despite being young at certain positions. I think their secondary is tremendous. Right now, Blake, for me, outside of this
secondary is tremendous.
Yes, I'm going to keep pushing that narrative, man. I get that they've got two young cats out there, but they both had picks. They both had huge plays.
I get that. They also had 312 yards put on them in a second half.
They're going up against a first-round pick and Carson Beck. Like, we got to you can give them a little bit of grace here.
I can give them
It's
grace.
not just the two of them.
You're saying the best in the country when they had a half or someone.
No, I didn't just say that they were the best in the country. I just thought I just said that they've got a very good secondary that's better than people thought that they were.
Okay.
Is what I was trying to say.
Sorry, I apologize.
Okay.
I missed what you said.
My final point with Alabama, though, Blake, everything is there for them. They feel like that because we haven't had enough teams that have been tested yet, they have shown up and shown us their true selves. They play to this potential. They will continue to be the number 1 team in the country.
So, look, I talked about this when they did beat South Florida, and we talked about them playing Wisconsin. Listen, from the fourth quarter of the South Florida game on, where they went 28 unanswered points.
Yeah,
Joe, think about it like this. Not only did they come off that fourth quarter in doing that, they did that in the first half to Georgia. So what did we see in context here? We saw a team that went out there and scored like unanswered 56 points. That is insane that you gave up 0. Joe, if I would have told you that the last 2 quarters against South Florida and the first 2 quarters against Georgia, Bama would score 56 points. You'd be like, okay, well, maybe they must have got – damn, they must have put up 56 points in the second half against USF. They didn't do that to Georgia. Maybe they got 14 points. Maybe. They have shown spurts of being one of the top elite offenses in the country.
Yeah.
Here will be my entire argument until someone finds a way to stop him with the way that this man is throwing the football. Jalen Milroe. That is my argument. That's my argument. I haven't said this all week. I want to end it with this. Do I think Ryan Williams is fantastic? Yes, I actually do. He's not the straw that stirs that drink, brother. Like, right. Jalen Milroe is the reason they are looking the way that they are looking at the current moment.
Right. Ryan Williams is special, but to that point, And I don't think anyone's going to really disagree with that
they've
take.
been all over Ryan Williams.
Well, but it's the story. It's the young kid who's
Fair.
too young to be in college football, and he's a top 10 receiver already in the sport.
CD passing ratio the last 8 games is 18-1.
He's not making a lot of mistakes, and he's also, his running ability has taken a step further. I think a lot of people are promoting his passing ability, but like him as a runner, I think it has become extremely dangerous. He's just the most well-rounded player in the country right now. He's gonna be potentially a first-round pick this year, from what I've heard, and he should win the Heisman. You have the best player, you have the best team. Everything's going in the direction.
It's too early.
I understand that, but like, well, here's a good counterpoint. Jaden Daniels, didn't we feel like we knew by week 6 that like, oh, this is about to be a special season?
That's a little bit different. I'm gonna throw a wild card at you, and you're gonna really want to punch me in the face.
Oh no.
The only reason I would say hold off on that is because Quinn Ewers also has to face Georgia. And then he's got next week when he's coming back against.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate that logic.
I know, but I think it's way too early, because you know what's going to happen, though, Joe. If that kid comes back and then he beats those teams the way that we think that they might do, I'm just going to hold off on that. All right, what team do you want to get to here next on our power rankings?
You and I, we already kind of talked about Georgia a little bit. We flip back
to talked about Georgia a lot this week. We can pass on that.
Yeah. I want to talk about Ohio State. I think that you and I are a very different range on Ohio State. I've said this.
Yeah, we both have them at 2.
Did I keep them at 2? Sorry, we're both clicking it at the same time. No, I have them at 4. I have them at 4. I just want to bring this up with them. I'm not doubting them. Like, I really think after Oregon, we're going to be having a much different conversation. And then my whole argument's going to be is, I know that we're not doing this based off of resume, but if they beat Oregon and they look really strong in doing so, that to me is more impressive than Texas beating Michigan. So I'm going to probably end up moving up Ohio State. All I'm saying to this point, I've seen like 60% capacity of what they are. Like we saw them, Devin Brown played a good chunk of the last game because Will Howard had that brief injury for a period of time and went out. Like, this isn't the full version of Ohio State yet. We have not even been close to exposed to it. We have no idea. It's kind of like last year with Michigan, where we really didn't know what Michigan was until they played Ohio State. Like, it was up until that point that we knew what they were. Even the Penn State game was not a full indication because they beat Ohio State and then their full playoff mode was unleashed. So, I don't know. I can't get to putting them at 2. It's less of a disagreement with you, but more of me just making a statement.
Then they're going to go out there this weekend and blow out Iowa. You know, you get what I'm saying? Like, look.
Yeah, but is that more impressive than what Texas has done to this point and what Tennessee has done to this point?
Here's my thing with Texas, and now I'm going to really contradict myself here. I don't know what how do I want to say this? The Michigan win looks like dog shit to me. I'm going to be real with you. Because as soon as they played that game, they changed quarterbacks and were a completely different team and completely different identity.
Yes.
I got to be honest with you. They couldn't run the ball better than USC did. Let me say that again. We talk in praise about that offensive line, do we not?
Mm-hmm.
USC went up in that building and smacked some asses around now. Okay?
But Michigan's less of a dead body than we thought that they were. Like, we thought after the Texas game that they were going to get worse and worse, but the USC win proves that they're capable.
But here's what I know, though. USC lined up and bought that ass in the second half. There's a reason that Woody Marks had 100 yards rushing. There's a reason he had a touchdown. Because, Joe, they were able to line up and bop them in the mouth. So the bottom line for me, though, is, and by the way, their quarterback, Miller Moss, went, what was it, Joe, what did we say? Was it 15 of 18 in the second half for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns? I get what you're saying, and I know that was look, obviously USC lost. But my point I think that there are also things that you have to look at Texas and say, look, I know that USC can line up and run the football on them, but your inability to do that at the current moment also wasn't there. It's not my fault. I'm not going to take away from you beating their ass, but I'm also going to take away that you faced a walk-on that got benched the next week because he stunk. And their full identity changed. I need to see a little bit more for Texas. I'm going to get that in 2 weeks or on October the 12th when they got to face a really good defense in Oklahoma. Joe, there's a strong possibility that they keep 5, maybe 6 in the box and make Quinn Ewers beat them coming back off of injury, and that's a whole nother thing. Like, a whole nother thing is what happens if Quinn goes down again? Because, Joe, these injuries keep compiling themselves at this point. When you have injury after injury after injury, they keep compiling. So I understand what you're saying about Texas. I don't disagree. It's why I got them at 3. But the bottom line for me is, do I have them at 3 or 4? Whichever one. The bottom line comes for me is everybody wants to give them – I have them at 3. Okay, that's what I thought. The bottom line for me is when it comes down to it, I saw another team that's in these power rankings be able to line up against Michigan and punch them in the mouth when you couldn't. So when you do have Georgia, when you do have a stout defense against Oklahoma, what if that gets just as worse? And then those teams, when you played them, have more of an ability to score than what Michigan did when you played them. Does anything that I think I made sense there, but
somewhat.
I'm not ready. I still think let's go to Council Bluffs, Ohio today, right now. And you tell me that Ohio State and Texas are playing on the neutral field with Quinn Ewers coming off of an injury, and we don't know of their ability to run. Who would you take today?
Between Ohio State and Texas?
Yeah, Ohio State and Texas. Who would you take?
God, man, I don't know if I can answer that question if I'm being completely honest.
No, you know good and God darn well.
I honestly don't think I can answer that question because what I just said, we've only seen 60-70% of Ohio State, and I feel like I know what Texas is.
Okay, well, here's the thing. If we got to split hairs at that, it is what it is. All right, who else on this team? Miami did not move for us. That was the thing that go ahead.
I was going to say I almost dropped them after the game, but I have to recognize that it's the cliche that I repeat constantly on the show, which is good teams find ways to win when they're playing bad. They still found a way to win that football game despite multiple turnovers, being down for a multi-score deficit, all of those things. They were able to get back into it and win. So I can't hold that against them. You know, I kind of just feel like they're pretty firmly placed where they are until they get a big win, which isn't going to happen until they play Clemson. They played Louisville, but I don't think Louisville is a very tough opponent.
Outside of Penn State and Oregon, I mean, Joe, you're splitting hairs between them and Oregon. I mean, they're one of the only remaining undefeated teams that have a chance to be here. Right. I mean, we dropped Oregon a little bit after they had a really bad game against Boise State and had to kick a field goal to walk it off. I mean, what's worse, an ACC opponent, Virginia Tech, who, by the way, still has a lot of really good talent? I mean, come on. And my question is going to be, is Oregon really been tested? Tell the truth, no. They really hadn't. I know
they've probably been tested the least of some of these teams that we're talking about right now.
Right. They went up against Ashton Jeanty, who might be the best back in the country. I get that, but you still got pushed around. So this is my whole point that I alluded to earlier to round this segment out. Joe, that's why I think that, like, once you get past 5, 6, the drop-off is there. Because, like, think about this.
Wait. I hate when you're doing this. There's no drop-off. There's no drop-off. There is no drop-off. These teams are all good.
All right,
there's no answer on who the best on who's going to win the national title right now.
Can I give you a scenario right quick?
Mm-hmm.
Georgia would face Oregon today.
I don't think that's like a lock of an assumed victory.
Yes,
I think that Georgia beats them, but I'm like stunned by this. I don't know how you can look at what we've seen so far and think that there's this massive drop off between these teams.
Oh, there is. Because
this is the most competitive, parity-filled year that we've ever had.
You mean to tell me that Boise State can line up and push Oregon?
No. Don't use Boise State as an example. That is not a good example. We're talking. It's not a good example because they're not a part of the conversation that we're having right now. They get a bid, but they don't really deserve to have a bid.
No. You misheard what I just said.
What'd you say?
You mean to tell me that Boise State can push around Oregon up front and Georgia can't? Like, are we really trying to split the hairs that Georgia's loss is by 7 to Alabama on the road? Okay, they've beaten the dog shit out of your team that's at Clemson.
It was
Joe,
wait, Blake.
How are you going to tell me that there's not a massive drop-off when the number 4 or 5 team on our poll literally beat the dog shit out of number 9? How can you tell me that?
Because, Blake, that was – okay, but the problem is that multiple of these games that you're bringing up were in the first 2 weeks of the season. So much changes in that period of time. Perfect example of some of what changes is that Georgia's banged up right now, and they've got multiple injuries that's holding them back.
They had their number 1 running back that was out because of a DUI. There were still situations.
Oh my God!
Was there not? Was he not?
I really cannot get behind you saying that you think that this is not one of the most balanced years.
Listen to me and listen to me now. I've said it today and I'll continue to say it. When we get in the playoffs and these teams at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 start getting their asses whopped, I
don't think that. I think you're going to be stunned by how close some of these games are, man.
Watch.
Dude, I just don't know. I just don't know how you can sit here and say. I just don't know how you can sit here and say that there is a clear separation between them.
The clear separation happens when Georgia beats the dog shit out of your number 9. If you're going to go from weeks 1 to 6, which is what you started off the segment by saying. You start off the segment by saying, I can only go what I'm based off of. That's why I have Ohio State at 4. Now you're turning back and saying, well, Blake, you can't use why can't I use week 1? Why can't I?
You can use week 1. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm just trying to point out here is that when you start off the season and there's a number of teams, like a team like Oregon that has a completely new offense, a new quarterback, and also I disagree that they got pushed around. Ashton Jeanty cooked them because he's an incredibly gifted running back. That Oregon was not getting pushed around by Boise State.
Offensive linemen have no respect for offensive line play. 0.
That's not true. That's not true at all.
I have no respect for offensive line play. It's seeping through your pores. Ulta just called. What's that? Oh, it's seeping through your pores.
Blake, I'm gonna keep coming back to this though. I absolutely completely hate that you don't like this playoff field.
What else is new? You hate me.
This is the most.
I thought we were best friends, and look, you're saying you hate me.
I said I hate your take. All right, let's get the game picks.